welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. How are ya? Have you had a lovely November? Last day of November, you know what that means. Tomorrow is December, aka Christmas time. So from tomorrow there will be a video going up every day between now and Christmas Eve. We will be celebrating Vlogmas, which is very exciting. So yeah, so just the last of the sort of Christmas, non-Christmas content today for the rest of the year is me wrapping up the books that I read in the month of November. I read 12 books in the month of November, which is pretty good going. I had quite a busy November. Also, November is my birthday month, so I treat myself to a few rereads and things that I thought I would enjoy. And yeah, it was a really, really nice birthday month, yeah, and a really nice reading month. But we're going to kick off with a book that I did not like, and I feel like, well, I thought I was the minority in not liking this book, but when it come down to it, and I put it on Instagram because I review all books on Instagram. I put a little review on my Instagram story, so if you'd like to go and follow me over there, Lauren and the Books. A lot of people got back to me and said, no, I didn't like this book either. The book in question, to keep you not in any more suspense, is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I listened to it this time round, and a couple of years ago I read it in paperback and didn't like it then. And so many people, like literally everyone I know in my life that is a reader, has read and enjoyed this. And not just read and enjoyed this first one, it's like really, really into the series. I bought these books for, I mean, David hasn't read them, you don't read a bloody thing. I bought these, all three of the paperbacks that were out, I think maybe even last Christmas or the Christmas before. My sisters read them, my colleagues have read them, my friends read them, and I just heard such good things. And I thought, I must be wrong. I must be wrong in not liking the book when I read it the first time round. So yeah, I gave the audiobook a go and I just didn't get on with it again. And that's fine. So I think I need to trust myself when I don't like something that's hugely popular, because that's fine. You can't like all the things all the time. The things I didn't like about this book is that there was so many main characters, like 20 plus main characters, and a plot I couldn't really get my head around and couldn't really connect to. Yeah, and I just found the whole thing quite tired and long and drawn out. And like I say, loads of characters and loads of plot that I couldn't really connect to. So not for me. Great way to start the month, but the rest of the month, pretty good. Next up was Be a Birder by Hamza Yassin. I listened to the audiobook of this. This was a lovely treat, and I'm going to be getting my hands on, I think I might put on my Christmas list the physical copy of this, because whilst it was lovely to listen to the audiobook of this, I think the physical copy with the photos and stuff of the birds would be even better. So this is a book. Hamza Yassin is the Strictly champion currently, and he is also a videographer for Blue Planet, worked with David Attenborough. I always go to say Richard Attenborough, but I mean David Attenborough. And has been very, very interested in birds his whole entire life. And this is a book relaying all the many birds that you can spot all over the UK, and where you might spot those birds and what time of year you might spot them. And yeah, just lovely, lovely chat from Hamza about birds. So I used to be a bird watcher when I was younger. I used to go with my great uncle, and we used to go bird watching, and it was just so lovely, and it's something that I still have a little mild interest in. I haven't done any bird watching for a long, long time, but maybe that's something I might do in 2024. And this was lovely to sort of reignite that. What was lovely about the audiobook is that Hamza does a lot of the bird calls in the book, which is lovely. But what I do feel like I was missing were pictures of the birds, and that's why I think I might pop the actual physical copy on my birthday list. Especially if I am planning on doing some bird watching next year, it'll be a good place to start. But yeah, I didn't know if this was marketed as a children's book, but it definitely didn't feel like it was a children's book when I was reading it. Not that it wouldn't be suitable for children, but yeah, it felt like I was being spoken to as an equal, and I thought that's a lovely way to do that, because bird watching isn't everyone's bag, but it definitely got me interested. And my sister's actually listened to the audiobook as well, and she loved it too. So, and she's never done a day's bird watching in her life. So yeah, really very much enjoyed this, and on the Christmas list, the physical copy will be going. Next up, another audiobook was Getting Better by Michael Rosen. So I listened to this over 2 periods because I got it out from Libby and it needed to go back. So you'll know that I loved Michael Rosen's book, where is it? Many Different Kinds of Love, which is a story of life, death and the NHS. And this is Michael talking about him discovering he had COVID in the early days of COVID and being very, very poorly, and then the recovery from that. And this sort of follows on from that. So this is called Getting Better, and it's about his sort of recovery in the long term from COVID. But it also touches on, well, features quite heavily, the death of his son. When his son was 19, he died of septicemia, completely unexpected. And it talks about Michael's journey with getting better from that. And yeah, it was a really generous read, because there's so many like awful things in there that he shares, both about like the loss of his son and his recovery from COVID. And it also felt really conversational, and I thought that both times, because often when I listen to an audiobook from Libby and then it goes away and then it comes back again, I never can connect to it again. But it wasn't. It was like me and Michael had been chatting, and then 6 weeks had passed, and then we were just chatting again. So yeah, I really think his tone and the way he delivers stuff is really personal. It feels really personal to you. And I loved it. I really loved it. So highly recommend. Next up was The Break by Katharina Vermette. I bought this book when I was in London with Mercedes and Jen, and I said to Mercedes, what's your favourite book by an Indigenous author? And she said, it's on the shelf over there, go and get it. So I did. I went and got it, and then I started reading it literally the next week. And this is about a group of Indigenous women living in the outskirts of Canada. And one of the women, Stella, on looking out of her window one night on this place called The Break, which is sort of like this big piece of land, witnesses a horrific sexual assault, and this is the repercussions and what happens after that, and her calling the police, and the police come in, and then them trying to get hold of the victim and trying to get hold of maybe who's done this crime and stuff like that. And we do follow some men here, so one of the men that we follow is a police officer, but the majority of it is focusing on the women. It was a really tough read because there's some really awful stuff in here, particularly the sexual assault, not only when it happens at the beginning, but sort of like reliving it through the victim's point of view, and then people discussing it and stuff like that. So you never really escape from that. So if that's something that you struggle with, then I wouldn't point you in this direction. But I found it, and it wasn't to do with the content, because I've read other books that have got that sort of content and I've been more into it, but I guess the word I'm using for, and I've used it the second time in this video, is I didn't feel like I fully connected with it. But yeah, so I gave it 2 stars in the end, but yeah, it did feel very real. I've just seen that Margaret Atwood's written, I love this, very tough and very real. I would agree, very tough and very real. Next up was The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I read this because one of my reading challenges was to read a book that I loved as a child, and this was a book that I absolutely loved as a child. I feel like I tell this story all the time on this channel, but if you're new around here, welcome to this story. And if you're not, enjoy the story that you've heard a million times. So this is one of my first sort of library memories I have. So I remember chatting with my dad, and my dad saying to me, oh, you'd really love the book The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and me trotting along down to my local library, which is still the library I use now, and paying 30p to get a reservation in, and waiting for The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe to come, and taking it home and just being absolutely taken by it. And then I also remember studying it when I was in year 2, so how old was I then? 7. And the classroom being decorated in snow, and I remember having like a fake tea party with Mr. Tumnus and having honey and honey on toast and tea. It was the first time I drunk tea, and I remember these memories so like they were yesterday. And then also my sister and I owned the BBC adaptation of this book, which was a bit scary, but Charlotte and I used to absolutely love watching that. So yeah, I've got a lot of memories tied up with this, and I had a lovely time reading this again. And then just coincidentally, Leeds Castle, which is a place that David and I visit quite often, it's a castle sort of local to us, and it's got some lovely grounds, and you get a membership. And if you're local to the Kent area, then at the moment they've got the castle decorated as Narnia. You go through a wardrobe, you go through the fur coats, and you're in Narnia, and it is amazing. We went for my birthday on Monday with my niece and my sister, and we all had such a lovely time. So yeah, would highly recommend that if you're in the area. But yeah, had a lovely time reading this, as always. It does remind me of Christmas. I know Father Christmas features in this, and it's set in winter. Well, not always, because there's the end isn't winter, but there's something wintry and wonderful about this for me. So had a lovely time reading it. Next up was Glutton by Ed Gamble. Listen to this on audiobook. I think we might be reaching the time in my life where I stop listening to things or reading things by comedians, because I don't love them, and it's mainly all for the same reason. So there's been a few that I have enjoyed. So I've enjoyed Parsnips Buttered by Joe Lycett, and I've enjoyed the one by James Acaster, not his most recent one, but the one before that. I can't think what it's called, but what James Acaster's one before the one he's just released. But I feel, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I feel very performed at, and like we're going for laughs and stuff like that, and that's not how I get my laughs. I enjoy like sort of conversations with people and stuff like that. And at the end of this book, Ed Gamble is in conversation with Nish Kumar, who is also a comedian who Ed went to university with and has been in his life a long time, and I enjoyed that part much more than I enjoyed the rest of it, in the same way that I enjoyed the podcast with these people, with James Acaster, with Ed Gamble, because they're in conversation and I like that a lot more. But yeah, there was definitely parts in this book that I felt like I was being very, very performed at. There was like sort of skits within the book that you wouldn't get if you were reading the book, that were in like they put a bit of music on in the background. So he's talking about a prison diet and saying, oh, wouldn't it be funny if influencers started following a prison diet, and then does this little skit with like sort of like plinky plonky music on in the background, and it just feels very like, oh god, this is not funny to me. I did enjoy the food bits. Ed's very into his food, as am I, and there's a chapter at the end about diabetes, which I enjoyed that as well. I wasn't sure if there was fleeting flirts with fat phobia. Ed used to be a lot bigger than he is now, and he maintained throughout that he loved being fat and he loved being fat, but it's just something I just felt a bit about. Every time it sort of come up, I felt a bit so yeah, wasn't my fave. And yeah, I think so endeth my relationship with it's a shame though, because I did really enjoy the Joe Lycett and the James Acaster one. Maybe I'll find more in future, but I think it's okay to not read them if I don't want to. Next up, one of those birthday treats I treat myself to. It's the Call the Midwife, A Labour of Love, 10 Years of Life, Love and Laughter, written by Dr. Turner himself, Stephen McGann. I won't go into too much detail about this, because if you're not into Call the Midwife, you're not going to be into this, but this is a book about the series and the 10th-year anniversary, which was a couple of years ago now. I think it happened during COVID. There's lots of photography and beautiful interviews and things with the cast and stuff like that, and I just think if you're a fan of something, this is my one true love, Trixie, if you're a fan of something, then it's really nice to get yourself a book about that thing and really immerse yourself in it. I loved reading this last year when I got it. I think I got it for Easter last year, and I loved visiting again this year, and it's just something I was just sort of like picking up. It's really heavy, so I was sort of reading it in bed and just picking it up and having a lovely time with it. But yeah, lovely, loved it, 5 stars. Next up was the 4th book in the Cay Chronicles. You'll know that I've been reading the Cay Chronicles this year. In December, I'm going to read the last one. So this was the 4th one, Casting Off. As again, I can't really tell you much about the plot because we're 4 books in now. So, and because some of the characters are elderly and there's babies being born and and I don't really want to tell you much about what's going on because it would ruin the earlier books in the series for you. But safe to say, I loved this. I love the 3rd one the most. The 3rd one's been my favourite, but because my favourite characters are getting older now and are having their own lives, I really enjoyed hearing more from those characters. I can say who those characters are. They're Louise, Polly and Clary. But I also enjoyed hearing about the peripheral characters as well. I also love Zoe. And yeah, this was, I've just enjoyed the whole series, but the 3rd was my favourite. But yeah, this is really great. But I just feel so sad about going into the 5th one because I don't ever want it to be over. But I've got a whole host of Elizabeth Jane Howard books to read, I guess, because I believe she's written quite a lot. And if you are an Elizabeth Jane Howard, yeah, look at all of these. If you are an Elizabeth Jane Howard fan, then please do let me know where I should go next. Because I'd love to do this. I think I'll probably reread these again at some point in my life as well. And I've also got the radio play waiting for me to listen to, which is 12 hours. So I'm looking forward to that. So loved that. Then I read Clean and Green by Nancy Birtwistle. Got this out from the library. It's already back at the library. You'll know that I've been getting into my cleaning this year and have been having a lovely time and really getting, like, just finding sort of like a lot of comfort in cleaning and having a nice time doing that. But something I was aware of is that some of the products that I've been using weren't necessarily the most environmentally friendly. I always use cruelty-free products, so I've always made sure that all of the products that I'm using have not been tested on animals. But a few things are toxic in waterways and stuff like that, and I wasn't happy with that. So I wanted to have a little look at how I could expand my cleaning regime, and I thought this was the best place to go. So many people had recommended her on Instagram, and I do follow her on Instagram, but I found the book really, really helpful. It's got 101 tips of different things around the house. Some stuff that I will never ever use. For example, I don't have a garden, and I don't think I'm going to be, some other things I wouldn't use, like cleaning jewellery and stuff like that. But some stuff I would find really, really helpful. Unblocking drains. I've been wanting to find a way to do that without using proper toxic drain unblockers, and I've definitely learned from that. And yeah, other bits, cleaning showers, things like that. Some stuff I already knew, like I've been using white vinegar a lot. So that was, it was sort of reassuring as well, I guess, to know that I have been doing some things right already. So yeah, had a great time with this, and if this is something you're interested in, it was nice to sort of like sit and read it for an hour and get through about 20 tips and think about different things and then come back to it another time. So yeah, enjoyed that too. Then the last audiobook I listened to of the month was The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue, and I really, really loved this. I was trying to think of the equivalent of what a page turner would be when you're listening to an audio book. So if anyone's got any of those suggestions, do let me know. This really reminded me of a book that I read and loved last year called Tender by Belinda McEwen. Both books follow a male-female friendship where the male is gay. And yeah, a really intensive friendship where they sort of live together, work together, spend all of their time together. They know each other's inner secrets and their relationships and the ins and outs of everything. And I loved everything about this book, The Rachel Incident. It really sort of encapsulated youth. I think it felt very, very youthful, and them sort of like I said, boozing together, working together, knowing everything about each other's lives and stuff like that, and then sticking up for each other and being really loyal to each other. What I really liked about this book is that we're hearing about Rachel in the current day, and then we only ever hear about James, her partner, her best friend, in the past. So yeah, so it's really interesting to hear that sort of like historical, because it's not historical, but like him in the past, like memories of him, and how memories can be tainted, and you can remember someone so perfectly, or remember something that happened and remember it in a really bad way and stuff like that. Yeah, and then we follow her sort of romance side of things and where that ends up and stuff like that. But yeah, I very, very much enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to read more Caroline O'Donoghue. I've already got a book of hers on my shelf. And every year, Promising Young Women, every year I get it out for the Irish Readathon, and I never get around to reading it. So that is a priority next year for the Irish Readathon. And then I read Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I read and listened, sorry, so that wasn't the last audiobook, because I read and listened to the audiobook of this. This was another reread and a treat for me, because in November, for the past few years for Patreon Book Club, we've ended up rereading one of my favourite books, and I always give a little choice, we put a little poll up and you get to pick, and this was the one that won. So yeah, it was lovely, lovely, lovely to reread this. This is maybe my third or fourth time. And yeah, I just love Anne so much. She's just so enthusiastic and wonderful, and a real sort of like just joyful person, and just brings a lot of joy to me. So even in the sadder parts of this book, which there are, the joy of Anne just sort of shines through, and it was just lovely. And I absolutely love discussing it for Patreon Book Club as well, because so many people also recognise that in Anne, and it ended up scoring 4.25, which is the highest, well, joint highest on the Patreon book league table. The second, the book that it's joint first with is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. So that was the first book we read of the year. So yeah, had a lovely, lovely time reading this, and will always hold it dear in my heart, and cannot wait to read the rest of the series, which is something I'm looking at doing next year. I think I might read the rest of the series next year. And then the last book I read of the month was Weirdo by Sarah Pascoe, again for a book club. I've set up a book club at my choir, which is quite exciting, and we had the first meeting last night, and I was so excited, because we planned to go to Wetherspoons after choir to discuss the book, and I really honestly thought it would be me and David, who hadn't read the book, and I knew one other had read it, so I was thinking it was just going to be the three of us, but there wasn't. There was like 12 of us, which was so exciting. So the book itself, not many people loved. It scored an average rating of 2.25. I gave it 3 stars. It's definitely something that would be more my taste. It reminded me a lot of I'm a Fan or Diary of a Bookseller, Idle Burning, which are books that I've loved this year. Now, I didn't love this, but I could appreciate it for what it was, and I found it very, very readable. A lot of the people at book club hadn't read things like this before. A lot of the people at book club were big crime readers or women's contemporary fiction, so this was unusual. We're hearing about Sophie and her obsession, well, her obsessions. She's many obsessions, but the main one we're hearing about is an obsession that she had with a chap that she worked with one summer called Chris, who then goes travelling to Australia, and she gets herself into a lot of debt just in order to travel to Australia, just to bump into him once. And yeah, there's a lot of that going on there. What I also thought is very well observed, because Sophie now works in a really awful pub, and there's like awful characters that come into that pub, and that was very well observed. Her relationship with her mum isn't the best, and I thought that was really well done as well. The reason I picked this for the Choir Book Club is because it's set on the run up to Christmas. It says, it's December, the festive season looms, and Chris has entered the pub and re-entered her life. And I thought, oh great, that'll be good on the run up to Christmas. But the actual Christmas scene is like really, really depressing. They have an awful Christmas, the family, and no one's getting on, and there's so much passive aggression and also just aggression. So yeah, so it wasn't what I think we were all expecting, but it definitely lent to a good discussion. But yeah, we were all trying to think of afterwards who we would recommend this to, and I was thinking I would probably recommend it to people who had enjoyed I'm a Fan and Diary of a Bookseller and Idle Burning and books like that, but otherwise I can't really think of that. One other person at the book club was reading I'm a Fan and hadn't read this, so she'd come along anyway just to get an idea of things, and when we were talking about this she was like, oh, that really sounds like a book that I've read called I'm a Fan. I was like, I know! So yeah, I'm glad that that was sort of coming across as well. So yeah, if you'd enjoyed that, maybe you'd enjoy that, but otherwise I was like, oh god, I can't really think who would enjoy this very much. So there we go, those are all the books that I read in the month of November. 12 of them, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Very, very exciting. Had a lovely, lovely reading month. Very excited about my December reading month. I'm looking at my Christmas books over there right now, and they look very, very exciting. So, as I said, Vlogmas kicks off tomorrow. The first video of Vlogmas, as ever, is my December TBR. So I'll be talking about all the books that I am planning on reading in December. Christmassy they are. And I'll see you basically every day between now and Christmas. So I'll see you then. Bye!